Hi, welcome to the final training webinar of 2025. Indeed, the final webinar of any type for this year as we head into the holiday hiatus. Just as I did last week, this week's webinar is a topic that will not take up the full 2 hours to explain or describe. We're going to talk about templates and template app stubs today. Before we do that, though, I do want to share something that we added to the product, and I haven't actually talked about it anywhere. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it just, fell through the cracks. But if you look up here at the top bar, the navigation bar up at the very top, the menu bar, you will notice that this color is not the dark blue color that we usually use here at BP Logix. And if I switch over to the documentation server, you can see that it's not even blue at all. That's because we have added a new property to installation settings. Now, over here on the training system, which is the one that I often use for webinars, I am on 6.1.352. So that is the current version or the current release version of the product. I don't remember exactly when we added it here. It was in 6.1.3x somewhere, but there is this property right here, Navigator Banner Background Color. That's the one I was trying to highlight, where it will take either a hexadecimal or RGB color that you can set the menu bar at the top of the screen. Now, I've chosen a steel blue color. It's a little darker than our normal steel blue. It's kind of a blue gray, and this is our color that we use as an alternate for the light gray color that we usually use. Over here, I've just set it to a very dark and I think aesthetically pleasing purple color. But that setting enables you to change the menu bar, so gives you a little more customization, along with, of course, the logo, which you can customize, as I've done for both the training and documentation folders. So just a little aside to talk about today, I guess announce the feature isn't the proper word, but to point out a new feature we added that gives you a little better sense of customization. There's also a bug that we are going to have to fix. And as I pointed out a second ago, we have these logos up here. These are the custom logos that you can set. As you can see, here's the logo URL right here. It's been uploaded into the custom/pictures folder of my installation. And so for both training and documentation, I've created a unique logo, which is really great right up until the point that you change the screen size to a smaller size. Well, I don't need to change it so much vertically as I do horizontally. So take a look at this logo that appears up there, which has training under the BP Logix logo. And as it gets smaller, we switch over to the mobile version of the product, where we have our mobile hamburger menu right there. So if you're looking at it on your phone, this is what you see. And notice it's still the BP Logix logo. It is not that custom logo that I configured for the site. That was a little oversight. I came across this yesterday. So I've put in a JIRA ticket for the engineering team to fix this so that in all cases, whether we're looking at it at mobile width here or whether we go back to desktop width, we always want to see the custom logo that we have displayed. Or alternatively, if I have a separate logo at the workspace level, I don't for any of these workspaces, but if I had a workspace that had a custom logo, we'd want to see that custom logo up here as well. So that's a little thing that we'll be fixing, but it's kind of a nice deal to be able to change the colors on your menu bar to more closely match whatever branding that you want to present in terms of your organizational colors to your end users. So that's just a Just a little aside. For today, let's go to the content list and let's talk about the thing that we're actually going to be talking about for the rest of the next probably hour or so. And that is the application template feature and building your own template stub. So if we go to our content list, I go to the default partition and we're going to have to toggle our system folders so that we can see our system folders here. And in our system folders, there is a folder called Template Library. There's also another one called Template Data. And the only reason that it exists is because it actually contains some data that the default template library applications that we give you use. You won't actually ever work in the template data folder. It simply exists when you download the template library. Speaking of which, the template library is downloadable from, well, one of the horrible things about Zoom is that it has, when you share a portion of your screen, has this big bar that hides our or hides my navigation bar on the browser. But if we go into the uh, support site and we go to downloads, now you have to be logged in to the support site to see this, but you can access the Process Director downloads page when you're logged into the support site. And when you do, if you scroll down, there's the BP Logix template library, and you can download that template library. As you can see, we don't change it much. We just have these standard applications that we put in. Good Lord, is it 5 years ago already? But we can download that template library. It's a zip file that contains a PDZ archive, which you can import into the root of your default partition, or any partition actually, and it will create this template library folder. There are several pre-existing applications here. This one is not one of them. This is the template app stub that I use to quickly create new applications. But we have this checklist request and a contact form. These are all very generic requests. Several of them are relevant to higher education. And each of these are self-contained applications. So if we open up the IT request application, we can see there's some documentation on it. There is the process timeline. There is a bootstrap version of the request form. Then there is the normal standard OFD version of the request form. There's an email template, and there's a folder for configuration data, which contains a drop-down object, and then there's a reports, which contains a reports folder, which contains a knowledge view. Most of these applications are like that. These are not fully fleshed out applications for reasons that will become rather obvious as we continue, and they will require, obviously, a fair amount of localization and configuration to configure. So you will want to change the form and its design somewhat for the process. You'll undoubtedly want to go in and change some of these task assignments. You may want to add new activities or change some of the existing activities. But the point of this all is to create a template or a series of templates that enable you to create new applications more quickly. And I meant to delete this, which I didn't. So we are going to delete it because I'm just about to recreate it. So having it in there is not particularly helpful for us at this point in time. We'll place it back in there. Any application that exists in this template library folder can be used as a template for creating new applications. That's what all of these are. Now, most of these are far more specific and far more generically configured, which is fine for a template, but none of them really are good for, well, creating a new application from scratch. The whole point of the template library is to eliminate some of that rather time consuming stuff that you always have to do for every application. You've got to create a form, and then you've got to customize it with the generalized look and feel of the forms that you want to present to your end users, add logos and stuff like that, which we'll do in a minute. And there are probably some standard fields that you use. As I've mentioned many times, we always put in the requester, the request date, and a field for the request number so that we can generate a unique request number for each of the applications. And so therefore, we have these standardized things that we want to put in. For example, in a process timeline, generally, not always true, but generally, process timelines consist of an approval loop. So when you're building an application, well, you got to build the form, you got to do all the standard design stuff that you have to repeat, that is repeated over and over on every form. Then you've got to have a process timeline. You got to connect to the form and the process timeline. You got to build an email template, even a simple one, and that has to be connected to the process timeline so that that's the template that gets used whenever email notifications are sent. And it just gets tedious to do over time. If you make like 10 or 15 applications, that's 10 or 15 times they have to constantly replicate these same steps. The nice thing about the template library, in addition to these particular templates that we've provided for you, which you may or may not find useful, or indeed you may not want at all. I mean, you don't need to download the template library folder from us at BP Logix. You can literally just go to the default, the root of the default partition, and just create a folder called template library inside the square brackets. Those square brackets are important. And you can just create a blank template library. And if you do, then you have a template library. It may be empty and there may not be anything in it, but whenever you create a new application, you can create a new application from that template library, because when you go to the Create New menu, the very first menu item is Start from Template. Now, this menu item does not work unless you have a template library folder. But if you have a folder with this name, template library in square brackets, Process Director will just assume that that is where all of your templates are stored. And so you don't even need our templates. You could just create a template library folder at the root of your partition, and you now have a template library, although one that is empty, obviously. The template data folder, you don't even need. The only reason that it is included in the download that we provide from BP Logix is that it contains some business rules and drop downs and some data that exists that some of the template library applications we created uses. So, campus locations and schools and colleges, which, by the way, if you use it, you will need to go into like these drop downs like schools and colleges, and you'll need to configure them to ones, if you're a higher ed institution, that match your institution. But the template data folder itself is only necessary for the template library applications that we provide. If you don't want to use any of our applications, you want to create your own template library folder blank and then just do what you want inside that folder, then great, you can do that. There is an architecture to the folder. We always recommend, and I repeat this a lot too, that whenever you create an application, everything in that application should exist inside a parent folder. We enforce that in the template library folder. We assume that every top-level subfolder in template library is an individual application with its own forms and process timelines and everything. And the reason why we assume this is because the way the template library works. So if I want to add something from the template library, and I'll just create a quick one here, we'll go into the training webinar folder. And I want to create, say, a new application. So I would go to create new and start from template. And then a create new using starter dialog is going to show up. And each one of the items in this dialog box here that represents one of the folders in the template library. So we have application, there's application. We have contact us, checklist request, which is there, contact us, which is there, and so forth. So each one of these are a separate application. Now I have one that's a blank one that's just called application. That is my template stub that I created. We're going to kind of reproduce that today. So let's say I wanted to make a contact us application. Well, the first thing I need to do is give it a new application name. So we'll just call this webinar for right now. We'll use the contact us template. I'll click on contact us and it will give me a dialog box of warning. It says you really want to do this, to confirm it, and I'll click OK. And now inside the training webinar folder, it will create a new subfolder. It's going to take the contact us folder and it is going to transfer it down here into my training webinar folder. As you can see, I called it webinar. That names the folder. That's going to carry over the little telephone icon that existed in the original. It's going to carry over the description that was in the original. And when I go into the folder, what it's going to do, because I named this webinar, it is actually going to append the name webinar to all of the objects. So here's the form. The form is originally called Contact Us. Now it's called Webinar Contact Us. And there's the Webinar Contact Us process. So it just appends whatever you've named the application to the start of all of the objects contained in that folder, including even the Word document that contains the webinar documentation, the 2 email templates, and so forth. And if we go into the reports, it will go into those subfolders and find this particular knowledge view, and it will append the word webinar, because that's the name I gave the application, to my objects. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we are actually going to create a webinar template of our own. So I am going to hit delete and get rid of that. And now let's talk about the utility of the template library for making new applications. All of the applications that exist in the template library are, in my view, of moderate usefulness. They do require some extra configuration and a lot of customization. And some of that you can just eliminate by going into the template library, let's say the financial approval. You can actually go in and edit these forms or this process timeline to match sort of a generic, well, in this case, it would be a financial approval request of some sort. And you could make sort of a generic application of that. You could go into the form and pop it open and go to the design view of the form. And there are a lot of fields and stuff on this form, but you could go in and change the logo that shows up here. You could change the background color of these items. You could go through the fields and see if these are the actual fields that you want and make whatever changes that you want. And you can customize just the template for your financial requests. And this is kind of a catch-all purchase expense / financial request form. And you could do whatever editing you want inside the template library to customize this form for you. And the nice thing is that you only have to do it once. Now, the downside for these applications is, as I mentioned, they're all quite specific and they do specific things. The checklist request is kind of interesting because what it does is it allows you to use an Excel file that's included with it to customize what happens in the process. It's in this configuration data folder. And you can, if you have a checklist that you need to go through and people need to check off a checklist, you can actually edit this Excel spreadsheet to create the checklist items that get displayed on the form. That's kind of a cool deal to be able to do. But outside of that, these applications are all kind of specific. What you really need is a template application for a generic new process. And we didn't provide that, which I think is probably an oversight on our part, but it's one that you can fix really quickly. Most of the time, whenever you're creating an application, it's rare that it falls, like let's take financial approval. In most cases, you probably don't want a generic financial approval form. What you probably want is a different form for purchase requests, a different form for generating a PO, a different form for travel reimbursement, a different form for expense repayment. And so a single form like this is probably not helpful. And indeed, it might be more tedious to try to take this template application and delete some of the fields and add new fields than it would be just to create something from scratch. There's always that balance whenever you have a template of knowing that I'm going to have to customize a template. Is it going to be easier just to build something from scratch, or is it going to be easier to take one of these pre-made templates and do a bunch of editing and get rid of some form fields and then have to be sure that those form fields are properly deleted, maybe add some new ones, maybe change the design a little bit? You can really get down into a rabbit hole in trying to reconfigure an existing form. So what you might want is to start off with not entirely a blank slate. Because remember, there's some common things that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to build a form. You're going to have to build a process timeline. They do need to be hooked together. You are going to need an email template that's also hooked to your timeline. And as a best practices matter, whenever you create a form or a process timeline, there are some best practices that you want to implement on each one, which means changing whether the form fields are enabled by default and when the form becomes read-only. So those properties that are on the properties tab of a form definition. Or for a timeline, I want to put all of my approvals in an approval loop simply because having an approval loop just makes managing how I either ask for a resubmittal or how the loop gets canceled. It just becomes a lot simpler if you use a loop. So the best practice is to use a looping segment on a process timeline. So what you might want to do is get all of that basic work that has to be done for every single application out of the way completely by just building an application template stub. And you can do this in one of two ways. If you're on a development system, it doesn't matter where you make the template because you're not going to do this on a production system. But on a development system, it's perfectly okay to create your template inside the template library folder. If you're uncomfortable with that and you don't want to possibly mess up someone else who's working for whatever reason, you don't have to build it in here. But on a dev system, generally you can safely build inside the template library folder, or you could just go down here into a subfolder And let me collapse that. You can go into like the training webinar folder and you could create your sample app here and then just move it to the template library folder whenever you're ready to do so. On a production system, in almost every case, you're simply going to import the PDZ file containing your template onto the production system. So you're not going to do any actual development on your production system. So this is all going to be on a dev system. And on a dev system, since most people usually aren't working on it, it's probably fine to build something directly into the template data folder. I'm going to go ahead and do that here because we're going to just build the form, the process timeline, and a very generic email template. And we're just going to drop it into our template library folder. But I wouldn't. But just to be clear, you don't have to do it in here. You could do it somewhere else and then just move it in here when you're done. But we're going to go ahead and do it in here because this is a development system. Nobody's on this machine but me. So the first thing we have to do is to create our parent folder. That's the folder that is going to contain our template application stub. And we're going to call this folder webinar. And we'll hit OK, and that will create our webinar folder. So at this point, we have a webinar. Technically, we now have a webinar application, even though all it would do if we tried to create an application would be to create an empty folder. But we now have our webinar application. As a best practice, I would go and give this application some sort of unique icon. So we'll just replace the standard gray folder icon with I like these dark purple colors. And I know there is under built-in icons, which we're going to change to purple again. I know there is up here somewhere a little camera icon, and that's what I want to use since it's a webinar. It would be nice if there was a search feature on these icons. Sadly, the icons don't have names. They have numbers. So we don't have a search feature for them. But I was pretty sure there was a camera icon on here somewhere. And I am not going to waste a bunch of time looking for a camera icon. Well, there's that camera icon. I guess that's close enough. I was looking more for the video icon, but there we go. To denote that it's a webinar, we'll just use our camera icon and we'll hit OK. And so if we go back to the template library folder, we can see that I have my webinar folder here and it has its own icon. When I create a new application based on this template, it's going to have that camera icon as its default icon. One thing I didn't do that I should have done while I was in properties is to add a brief description. Descriptions are always good because they do show up in the content list. So we'll just call this blank application for the template app stub webinar. And I'll do a little proofreading and spelling correction here. And webinar. And I'll even put a period on the end of that and I'll hit OK. And because I have added a description, that description will show up as the second line of my application folder. Again, when I go to start from template, I'm going to see that description in the box here for each of the applications, and it will show up as a tooltip control in your browser so that people can sort of mouse over the item, and when they do, they can see an explanation or description of the item. You know, a lot of times we create objects and we simply don't add a description. Indeed, there's two here in the applications that we provide you that don't even have any descriptions at all. That's a mistake on our part, admittedly. But while generally I think a lot of people just skip past putting a description. And if you've watched me, build stuff live on the fly at any point in the webinar, you may have noticed that I rarely go to the description either, unless I'm specifically pointing out its importance. But this is one of those cases where the description is important because the people who are going to be creating applications need to have a clear idea when they go to that start from template of what that application does, so that whenever they mouse over it, they get to see that whatever description you've given in a pop-up. So it's often helpful for enabling your implementers for knowing exactly what that application does. So in this case, I just explained that it's a blank application for the current webinar that we're doing. So now I've got my application template stub. Now, how you organize your application inside this parent folder is up to you, because the nice thing about placing an application inside a parent folder like this, and this is just as valid for applications that you create normally, is that if everything is included that application needs, with the exception, of course, of business rules, business values, data sources that are kind of universal and that must exist on both systems. But outside of global objects, everything would be part of that folder. It really helps during the import-export process, because you can export the entire application all at one time. You import it all at one time. The big plus to having everything inside a parent folder is that when I import it, if an object has a relationship to another object inside that folder, those relationships all get properly imported. So the links between forms and email templates and process timelines, those links will all work. They'll all exist. All of the objects are part of the import. And so what you end up having is way, way fewer import errors when everything is collected into one folder. That also implies that you're going to have some normal subfolder structure in there. How you organize it is up to you. I'll show you how we do things at BP Logix. Generally, there are some standard subfolders that get added. Now, for each individual application, you may not need those subfolders, but what we're trying to do here is to create an application stub that I can use for any new application I want. It's going to be generic enough so that all I have to do is just create a new application from this application stub, and all of my basics are going to be done. And I don't have to spend, an hour or so doing all of this tedious normal configuration work, and maybe more than an hour, depending on how complex your standard forms and email templates are. All of that work just goes away, because once I do it once in this application stub, then I'm going to have a generic stub that I can just pop in wherever I need it in my content list, and I can just start creating a new application with my form and my process timeline and my email templates all configured with all of the standard stuff, and it's ready just to customize by just adding whatever new things I need to add to it. So it makes my life a lot easier on a day-to-day basis having this app stub. But because an application is probably going to contain some common things. First would be data. We use Excel spreadsheets a lot, especially for cloud customers, to bring data into the Process Director internal user database where I can query it via SQL. I'm going to need a folder to store that. So one of the standard folders that I would create as a subfolder in the webinar folder would just be my data folder. So if I have any specific data that my application needs, I'll just place it in my data folder. Very common to have knowledge views as part of an application. So I'll create a folder for knowledge views. I'll just call it KViews. And so now I have a storage place for my knowledge views. And finally, the third standard folder that I would consider placing for every application would be business rules, because it's very common to have some business rules that look at your form specifically or your timeline specifically to evaluate the state of the form or the process timeline to return a value or to return true or false. And so you may have local business rules. So in general, I would create those subfolders. For the most part, I can place my form, my process timeline, and my email template in the root of my application folder. Some people like to separate forms and process timelines, and there are applications where, for example, some sort of case management application where I'm going to have multiple forms and multiple process timelines and case instances, and I may want to organize that differently. So I may want a forms folder and a process timelines folder, and maybe a case folder that contains my case dashboard and my case definition. So there will be differences, but we're setting this up for a standard application. Now, could you create a second template for case management applications? You probably could, but the trouble with case management applications is that there's no standard number of forms or process timelines that may be part of a case. So therefore, it's hard to build a template because are you going to have 3 forms and process timelines, 2, 5? You don't really know. It varies case by case. So while you could create a case-based organization for a template app stub, it's probably not going to be super helpful in a lot of cases. So just keep that in mind. What we will do is just build what I'll call a standard application, which is to say an application that doesn't use case management. So I'm going to need 3 objects: my form, my process timeline, and my email template. And I'm just going to make very simple versions of each one just to demonstrate kind of some minimal customization that you might have for your organization. So we'll start off with the form definition. And I'm just going to call it form. Remember, whenever you create the application, which currently is called webinar, you're going to rename that application, that webinar application. You're going to give it its custom name to specify what it is that it's going to do. So, it may be vacation approval, may be the name that you give it. Remember, it's going to append that vacation approval in that example. It's going to append the words vacation approval. And I say append, it's actually going to prepend them to the name of my form and my process timeline and so forth. So what I'll probably just do is just call this form. And whenever I create my vacation request application, it's going to rename this vacation request form. And same thing with my timeline. So I'm just going to give it a super generic name. Obviously, I should create a description here. Please do as I say, not as I do, because I'm not going to create one because I understand the pain of watching me type. So now I've got my blank form here. I can go ahead and do my initial visual configuration on the form. So we'll make this a process director type form. So what I'll do is at the very top, I'll drop in a table and I'll have it be 1 row with 2 columns. And I'll create my table. I'm going to highlight well, I'm going to try to highlight both of these columns. And we will go with cell and cell properties. And I'm going to set my background color to the standard navy blue color that we use here at BP Logic. So 082 F4D will be my background color. And I'll hit OK. So now I have my cell set as a background color. For this first cell, this is where I'm going to place my logo. I'll say that I want this cell to be 200 pixels wide. So I'll place my cursor inside that cell. And again, we'll go to cell properties. And in this case, I'll just set the width to 200. By default, it sets it as pixels. You could also set it as percent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the width of my first column to 200 pixels, and I'm just going to leave my second column free, so it will just automatically be however wide it needs to be for the viewport that the user is showing when the form opens. So it'll have a variable size based on what the form width is. So now I've got this shorter cell. I'm going to go ahead and go to my image control here. Now, there are two image controls. For a logo, you can use either. There is the standard image control that comes with CK Editor. CK Editor is the component that we use to build the online form designer. I think it's from Telerik, or it may just be from CK Editor itself. Not sure. It's not important. This is one of the standard image controls. Now, there is an image control in Process Director itself, which is the Process Director image control. And it's actually an image control placeholder. We use it on all of the other forms. It doesn't, or all of the other templates that we provide in the template library folder. I don't think it matters much which of these two you use. There are some advantages to the standard image control. Well, actually, both of these controls have advantages, but there are different advantages. The nice thing about the image control that we provide as part of Process Director is that it's a placeholder and I can edit its properties. For example, for the URL of the image, I can use a system variable or a custom variable to look at different images at different times. So for actual application development where I need to swap out images here and there, or for example, I want to drop a QR control on a form, and the image that gets created for that QR control is going to be entirely based on a system variable that you're going to configure, and that may change over time or at different times or at different places in the form's life cycle. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but we're just dropping a logo on the form. So I think I'm fine. Oh, well, I didn't want to use that control. Seems like I selected it anyway. I think we're fine if we just use the normal image control. Oh, no, that was the normal image control. Okay, sorry. I was a little confused there, but this is the standard image control that comes as part of CK Editor. The advantage to this is that I can just upload it once to the server and it now just works everywhere. So I am going to choose a local logo file. And do I have BP Logic's logos in here? No, I do not. So we'll go to Documents, Work, BP Logic's logos. And as you can see, I have a lot of them. And because I'm using the dark blue background, we will just use the white BP Logic's logo. And we'll drop it there and send it to the server. As you can see, this is a large format logo. It is 1,899 pixels wide. That's a little big. We're just going to go with 200 here, I think. And By default, the ratio is locked. So if I change the width, it'll change the height. And there's a little reset size button here so that I can click the reset button. Well, I went back. There we go. Now it's 200 pixels, and that's the size that I want to see it. And so I'll go to my next column. Actually, there's a couple of things I need to do here before I do that. For accessibility reasons, I need to put in my alt text and descriptions and other things for the image. I'm only going to have to do all this once, remember, because once this form is done, it's now templated. And when I use it, all of my settings and all of my configuration are going to be repeated. So I'll just call this the BPL logo. And I could put a link on it if I wanted. I don't, but I could. And I could go to advanced. And if I had a page, now we're getting deep into accessibility. If I had a page that contained a long description of this URL, I could link that page via the long description URL property. That is an accessibility property that enables you to link to a page that contains a detailed description of what is in an image. If somebody is using a screen reader assisted browsing device, then it could be redirected to that URL and it could read that description aloud to a visually impaired user. Logos don't need it because in fact, technically, I could mark the logo as decorative, and I don't need to provide any special explanations for logo images. Images that are part of content, you would need to do that for, but we're not going to worry about that now. We're also not going to worry about the advisory title. Again, another accessibility feature, which will provide a title for the image. Again, it's a logo. I don't need to worry about that here because, again, logos don't need that kind of detailed information. You just have to say it is the corporate logo and it's the logo. So we're fine with our image. We'll go to our next cell in our table, and we're going to do a couple of things here. First of all, we're going to set the text to white, and then we're just going to, well, I think probably we will format it. Well, I don't want to format it as a heading, but I do think I want to format it as bold. So I'll set it as bold, and we would just call this form title. Not super happy with the size here, so we'll highlight the size, just a form title, and let's say 36. So we'll go BP Logix form title. And I've got my header. So now every form that I create will have this header. Below that, I'll probably throw in another table. And now I want to throw in some of my standard controls. Depending on how you want to do this, you might want to place this in a section of its own. Here at BP Logix, because these are always, they're always standardized controls. We don't even need to present them as controls. One of the things that we often do, maybe as you saw previously, is that we'll toss them over on the side of the header. So just for the sake of that, we'll do that here. We will go to our table control, and actually we don't have to go to our table control. We can just right click here and we can go to column and we can go to insert column after, and it will just insert a third column here. And so now I can place in the 3 standard fields that we always use at BP Logix. I am going to right click on this cell, and I'm also going to go to its cell properties. Now it inherited the properties of the second column here that originally existed. I'm going to throw this in as 200 pixels as well. And what I'll do is I'll insert a separate table in here. And we'll give it 3 rows and 1 column. And we'll just insert that right there. Now I've got this extra space there that I want to get rid of. So it's hard to see because of the coloring, but I'm just going to double click on that blank line and hit delete so that now I just have these 3 rows here. And what I'm going to do in these 3 rows is I'm going to highlight them all, and I'm going to set my text color again to white. And I'm also going to boldface them all. And I'm just going to add in submitter. And then I'm just going to throw in an input control. And that input control is going to be called submitter. And I'm going to go to its field properties, and I'm going to give it the default value for form and form submit user. And I am also going to set this field to disabled. It will always be disabled. And we're going to control how it displays when I go into the form properties after I close off the design. The next line, I'm going to go with submit date. And for the submit date, I'm going to drop in a date picker, and I'm going to call it submit date. And I'm going to go to the field properties, give it the default value, again, form and form submit date. And once again, I'm going to disable that field. And then finally, for the 3rd row, I'm going to call it request number. And I'm going to drop in another input control, which I'll call request number. And once again, we'll go to field properties. Not going to set a default value for this. Actually, I am going to set a default value for this. And we'll go to string, and we will give it the default value generated on submission. And once again, I will set this field as disabled. Now, the reason I'm doing this is so that when the field displays at runtime on the form, it will only show the text. And I'm going to have to make that change in the properties tab of the form definition. Now, for this table here, let's tab into this next. I want to be inside this table cell right here, not inside the inner table. I may have set this cell property to be a little too, well, it's highlighting everything. So which one is being selected here? Let me go into, well, if I right click, I don't know what it's going to give me there. Okay, I'm going to add a row here that I'm going to have to delete in a second, but I can get back into my cell and go back to my cell properties. I'm going to increase this from 200 to 300 pixels, so it doesn't take up quite as much vertical space. There we go. That's probably a little bit better. And then once again, I'll double click down here and I'll up. It's not letting me delete that last row. I can, of course, do it in source, I think. So we'll go into source, and we've got table body there. is that extra paragraph that I want to get rid of. So I'll just get rid of that there. Go back to source and it looks all pretty again. And one last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this middle cell and I'm going to center the form title. All right, we're great. We have my header. We have our standard fields. There's not too much else we're going to do on the form just in the interest of time because somehow it's 11 o'clock already. I am going to add a section control. And, well, I don't want to add the section control yet. I actually do want to add a blank line down here. And I want to add in my variables that normally go on a form for the task instructions and for the running activity. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop in a system variable control. Other controls, system variable control. And I am going to use the activity running name system variable. And we'll just, and I actually want to do the pre and post properties here. So pre, well, I don't need to capitalize everything. Pre equals, we'll call this running activity colon space period. And I at least want the pre in there. I'm not going to do a lot of formatting or what have you, but I do need the activity running name. So we'll just call this running activity. And a lot of times, what is kind of cool to do here when we're doing these, and I'll do it afterwards, I'm going to make these bold and red. So we'll have my running activity, and then we'll add another space here, or we could go to another line. I'm just going to add a space here just to drop it in. Running activity, and I'm just going to add in another system variable control, and this one will be task instructions. Oh, wow. I was not looking at where I was typing, was I? Instructions. Well, I didn't catch the IN, did I? Instructions. And there we go. And I'll just call this instructions. Cool, cool. So I have running activity and then instructions. And in fact, what I might do here for instructions is do this. Type in a space / space instructions. And of course, I need my colon and my space there at the end. So we'll call this instructions. So there we go. I have running activity / instructions. And the nice thing about these system variables is that they will not appear on the form if we are not in task context. And so they'll be hidden otherwise. So that is kind of cool. I do want to boldface them. And I do want to change the color to red so that they're a little more noticeable. when the form is running. So I have my running activity / instructions. And then finally, I have my section. Now, we don't know how many sections are going to be on the form, but what we do know is I will probably need for every form a section that specifies what properties or what form fields constitute the request that I'm making. So we'll just call this request info, or we'll title it request info, and we'll go and call this request section. And we don't really know what's going to go in the request section, so we're going to go ahead and leave it blank. This will enable me to configure the form from scratch for my request. Don't know what's going to go on there other than the request info section. So we're going to leave that blank, but we are going to have to throw in a couple of more standard controls. We are going to go to my actions, and we are going to drop in my button area control right there below the section. And if we have to, we can add a blank line on the form to add in other sections or what have you. Or maybe we would just like to go ahead and start off with the blank line right now so that we can add new information a little more easier by just placing our cursor there, and we can add additional sections or what have you. But I've got my button area, and button area is fine for the name of this control unless you're going to have multiple button areas on the form. There's not going to be another button area control, so we'll just call this button area. And then once again, we'll go down one more space, and under other controls, we will drop our routing slip control. Probably only going to have one routing slip on the form. So we'll just delete the number after routing slip. And we're placing our routing slip below our action buttons so that if we are creating a very long application with lots of process timeline steps, I'm not going to have to scroll through 5 feet of routing slip in later activities just to get to my button to hit approve or deny. And with that, our form is done. We now have a generic form. It's got our standard look and feel. It's got our standard fields on it. It's got our running activity and instructions, which will only appear whenever we're in task context. So our form design at this point is done. So we can go ahead and save the form and then do the standard things that we need to do on the properties tab of the form definition. So when our form is saved, we will have to go into the properties tab. We'll go into our not default styles. We'll go into our options. We can't associate the form with a timeline yet, so we can't do that. But we do at least want to go down here and click the Show Disabled Fields as Text so that whenever we run the form, and we'll just go ahead and update and run the form now. This form tag could not be activity running name. What have I done wrong? That's what I have done wrong. My syntax is wrong on the form because I mistyped it. So we'll have to go back here to our running activity, and that should fix that problem. It is important that you get everything right. There we go. Oops, that text is showing up in black. So I do want to fix that. So I'm just going to highlight all 3 of these fields. And once again, we're going to reset. Oops, nope, didn't highlight them. There we go. We got that. We'll reset all of our text colors to white. Let us save and run again real quick. So we'll give it some time to save. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. Now I've got all the information that I need on my form. It all looks great. I've got my empty request info. As you can see, there are no system variables showing up at the top of the form because we are not in task context. So there are no task instructions. There is no running activity. So we don't see anything on the form at all. The nice thing about those system variables is that they do control their own visibility because they are dependent on a task running. And if no task or activity is running, they're just not going to display it on the form at all. That's exactly what we want to see. This is all great. So our form design is done. Our form fields that we placed on here are showing up as text. There's only a couple of more things that we need to do on our form here, which is to set form fields are enabled by default. We're going to disable them except for when we're in a new form instance. We've talked about this in best practices before, so we're going to go ahead and set that condition, and we'll go with form new form instance equals yes. So our form fields are only going to be enabled on a new form instance. What that means, of course, is if we want the form to be editable, or at least a portion of the form to be editable as we go through the process, we'll need to go to those individual sections or individual fields and enable them as needed. And entire form is read only when. We will set that to add a condition, and the entire form is read only when, and in this case, we'll go to our timeline, and our timeline status equals complete. And that way, once the timeline completes, the form will no longer be editable, irrespective of whether the controls are enabled or not. So that will help preserve our form. And fine, so we're done with our form for now. So now we need to go ahead and create the process timeline for it. And again, we're just going to create something very generic for our process timeline. And I'm again just going to call it TL for timeline. That's sort of the standard name that we give it. Obviously, I should give it a description, but I'm not. In a template application, your form and your process timeline, there's an excellent argument for in the template itself not providing a description. Because, to be honest, we don't actually know what the form and the timeline are for. So adding a description for them is probably not helpful, because when you create the application based on this template, you're going to have to change it anyway. So we are going to go ahead and leave it blank just as we did on the form. On the process timeline, well, my form at least exists. So I can link my form and my process timeline now. So I will set my form for timeline property to form here. And I'll update my process timeline. And now I'm just going to create something super generic. So I'm going to create 1, 2, and I'll just create the first 2 activities. I will make activity 2 dependent on activity 1. And activity 1, I'm just going to call this set request number. This is going to be a custom task type of process timeline activity. We'll go to the custom task. The custom task we want is going to be set form data, and we'll go ahead and add that set form data custom task, and we will set our container form as our form, and our configuration, we're just going to set that request number. As I've talked about before, we don't want to set the request number until we're actually in a running process, so that we don't burn sequence numbers, because I am, in fact, going to set this via a sequence number. So we are just going to use the sequence number system variable. And for the sequence number, I would try to give it basically a generic name here because I don't actually know how I want my sequence number to work. So this is one thing that I am going to have to change whenever I am configuring the actual application, but I at least want the building blocks here. And so we'll just call this, change this, and I will create a sequence number that creates a unique sequence for this application. And usually what I do is use some sort of letter prefix, current year, dash, and then 4 or 5 digit sequence number after that. So if it was like a purchase request that I submitted right now, it would be PR95 dash and then a 4 or 5 digit sequence number that will just run sequentially as these new application forms are submitted and they kick off our process. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. We'll close that. I've got my set request number. The second thing I'm going to need is to create an approval loop. So I'm just going to call this approval loop. I'm going to set the activity type to parent, and I'm going to go to looping, and I am going to set jump back to the top of loop and cancel the remainder of loop when the condition is met. And I'm going to create my conditions. Admittedly, the jump back to the top of loop you may or may not do. Generally, this is for some sort of initiator resubmittal as part of the approval process. So again, you may or may not have that as part of a standard process. So I'm going to create the condition here. It's simple just to go in and uncheck that box if you're not going to use it, but you might as well at least account for it in your template. So the worst thing that you have to do is just delete the initiator resubmittal activity and then uncheck this checkbox. But we're going to add it in here because it is often used, and it's nice to have it in your template because it will just exist when you create the application based off of it. So we're going to click to create condition. We're going to add our condition, and we're just going to pick any child activity result contains resubmit. And we'll need a resubmit activity or activity result on our activities, which obviously we'll have to delete if we don't want to return something to the initiator. And I'm going to do something similar for the cancel the remainder. I'm going to add a condition again for any child activity result. And we're just going to say contains, and then we're just going to say deny. So we're going to use approve, resubmit, or deny as our standard results. So we'll hit OK. We're good. Our loop is now done. And I am going to create just 2 child activities for my approval loop. And I'll call activity 1 initiator resubmittal. And I am going to say that this is needed when parent activity iterated equals yes. So unless the parent activity iterates, it will not show up. However, I'm probably going to want to add an additional one here, and I'm going to add activity result. Where is it? There it is. Activity result for my parent activity. Oh, I haven't saved any of this yet, so I can't actually set that condition. So let me update my process timeline. There we go. Now I can go back to initiator resubmittal. And so parent activity iterated is yes, and the activity result for approval loop contains resubmit. So the way that parent activities get a value, a result, is the result of a parent activity is always the result of the most recent child activity. So if the activity result for the parent activity is resubmit, then or if the for any child activity is resubmit, it restarts the loop. And if the last result was resubmit, then the result of the parent activity will also be resubmit. But I only want this to happen if my parent activity is iterated once. So that's got to be true. And also, the result of the parent activity contains resubmit. This is probably belt and suspenders. There's a couple of other different ways I could do this, but for now we're just gonna do that and leave it that way. So I've got my activity, my initiator resubmittal. I'm going to take my second activity, make it dependent on the first, and I'm going to call my second activity supervisor approval and this is going to be a user activity. I'm not going to change my participant, but I am going to add my 3 results, and I am going to put them in the proper order. So approve, and I'm not going to do a whole bunch of configuration on the results for colors and all of that stuff. Obviously, in the real world, you would, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to go with approve, resubmit, which will be option 2. And for my last activity result, I'll call it deny. And I will make that button number 3. That way our buttons will appear on the form in the order of approve, resubmit, and deny, because we always go, at least here at BP Logix, from the most positive to the least positive result. And then I'm just going to hit close here. And I'm going to add one more activity, and I'm going to make it dependent on my approval loop. And I am going to call this disposition notification. And I'm just going to make this a notify activity. Who am I going to notify when this process is complete? Well, I don't know. I mean, generally, I know I'm going to notify the timeline initiator. Beyond that, I might add more stuff to this, but I'm probably going to need at least that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this here. So now I've got at least the stub of a timeline. My set request number, I can configure real quickly. I've got my approval loop. It has my initiator resubmittal. It's got my supervisor approval with all the appropriate items on it. And in the future, this is going to become way more convenient, because what I'm going to be able to do in the future, we haven't built it yet, but I'm going to be able to copy and paste timeline activities. So I can take this supervisor approval and paste it, and it's going to have all of my results and everything all done. I won't have to reconfigure anything for the results. I'll just have to rename the activity, and I'll obviously have to set its dependency to whatever prior child activity. But altering timelines is going to be easier in the future. But for now, I've got a timeline that I'm kind of happy with. Again, I don't have a email template yet, so I am going to have to create that. But we're just going to do a real simple generic one for this. But I've got my process timeline. Now that I have my process timeline, I can go back to my form, and I can now set the automatically start this process. and I can set that to TL. And the timelines associated with with form, I can set that to TL as well. Now my form and my timeline are linked. And so the last thing I have to do is create a form definition to create my process or my email template. And so I'll call it email notification. I'll go into options here, and I have to be sure to check email template because email templates are special and they have special rules. So I need to be sure that Process Director knows this is not a form. It is going to be used as an email template, and I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to make this very generic. So we'll just start off with Dear. And I will drop in system variable control, and I will use the email user system variable. And add the appropriate punctuation. And we'll go task and other control, system variable control, and we'll just call this activity running name so we know what activity is running in the process. Didn't mean to hit tab there. Activity. Good. And you know what? I might even just boldface that just to make it stand out. And instructions and turn boldface off. And we'll drop in system variable control once again with our task instructions. And we'll correct some spelling there. Instructions. And now we will add in our link. So boy, click here is I'm not even going to put that there. You know what? I am just going to drop in the hot link control as is. So I have a hot link control. The text is going to be click here to view the task form. And the URL will be email URL with an extra S that I don't need. And the last thing that I'll need is an email data control. And we'll give this a subject task assignment colon. And once again, we'll go with activity running name, and we'll get rid of the extra N. For, and we'll use the form field system variable for our request number. So this will give you a task assignment, supervisor approval for request number, whatever. No reason to get any more advanced than that. I've got the basics of an email template. I've got a notification. It's personalized to the user, tells them what activity is running, gives them my instructions for that activity, gives them a link to open the form, and of course gives them a customized email data control. Now, normally we would have multiple messages and thus multiple email data controls on the form. We don't know exactly what messages we need to place on this form. So therefore, we don't really know what the configuration is, other than to know that we are going to need task notifications, and now we have one. We're probably going to have to do some further configuration on the email template to customize it for the application, but at least we have our initial email template. So, the one more thing I could do, it doesn't hurt anything, and it will be helpful if I'm going to have multiple messages on this email template, like, a message for if the application or the request has been approved, one for if it's going to be denied, the task notification that I have here, and maybe some others. So I'm just going to go ahead and I am going to add the embedded sections right off the bat. So I'm going to have this embedded section here, and I'm just going to call this section task. So that's my task notification. And then way down here, right after the email data control, I am going to give my embedded section end right there. So as I need to add new notifications to this email template, I can just start right there where my cursor is now, where it's blinking. I can add a new embedded section control, and I can throw in all the content for any additional notifications. So I'm good to go on my email template. I'm going to go ahead and close and save that. And we'll hit OK here. And now I can finish all of my object configurations by going back to my process timeline and setting email notification as my default email template for this timeline, and I hit OK. One more thing that I probably want to do is just to add a KView stub. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new knowledge view. And we're going to call this requests, and it'll be renamed obviously when it gets created. Now, I don't know what's going to go into this knowledge view in general, but it's most likely going to return form instances. I'm going to pretend that it's for end users. So I'm going to do some basic configuration here. I'm going to set the forms associated with knowledge view to the form, and then I'm going to go ahead and update. I'm going to go to my configure tab. There's not much that I need to do here, except I do want to use the process director 6 style. So I'm going to check that. I'm going to go to my configuration options. I'm going to assume that this is going to be shown to end users. So I'm going to turn off everything except for form instances. So it will return all of my form instances. I don't really know what's going to go in the columns, so I'm not even going to mess with the column configuration right now. All I want is to have an existing knowledge view that's already linked to my form, that already returns form instances for end users, that I can create as just a generic list of requests. If I want to go in and change these last 4 columns here to form fields, maybe add some additional columns, I can do that. In fact, I might not even want to have any columns in here other than just the name. I am going to want to keep the name there. And there is one more thing I need to do on the form that I forgot, that I always kind of lied past until I've created a couple of form instances and I realized that it's missing. So here we go. I've just got these columns. It's not going to return anything at this point because I have no form instances and I've only got the name column left, but that's fine because I now have the shell, the template shell that I need to come back in and configure this later without having to do any of the initial configuration for it. I do need to go back to the form, and I do need to go with the instantiated form name. And so what I'm going to do is go request number, and then I'm going to drop in request number from submitter on, and I don't remember whether I called it submit date or submission date. I called it submit date. So now I have an instantiated form name that is going to tell me what my request number is. It will be generated on submitted prior to, obviously, submission. So request number, whatever, from submitter on submit date. Again, you may want to customize this slightly differently, but for a generic form, this gives me the important information that I need, especially when I'm going through searching for requests. And if there are going to be hundreds of requests, I can search for Dale and it'll pull all of the form names that include Dale. Or I can search for specific request numbers, or I can search for specific dates or years. It makes my life a lot easier having these three standard fields, because now I've got three very useful things that I can search for and filter on in a knowledge view should I decide to do that. But now we hit OK and we're done. I now have an email notification, a form, a timeline. I have a knowledge view in my knowledge view folders, and I've all created it here in this webinar application. So now, anytime that I need a new application, I can just go into whatever folder I want to create that new application and just go create new, start from template, and there's my webinar application. I'm just going to call this the last 2025 webinar application. And I'm going to click webinar. Do I want to proceed with the creation of the webinar template? Yes, I do. And there we go. I have now created in my training webinar folder the last 2025 webinar application. And when I open it up, there's my last 2025 webinar email notification form and timeline. And now I can just begin doing whatever customization. So all the stuff that we've done over at least the last hour and 10 minutes, all gets done for you automatically. All I have to do now is go in and do whatever customization I need. So this is a very useful thing to have, this template app stub. And I would encourage you to create a template app stub inside your template library folder. And if you don't have a template library folder, I would encourage you to create one and then just place at least the blank template stub in there so that you have a way to just quickly get a head start on any new application that gets created. And remember, all of the customization that you make on the template form and process timeline, that gets replicated over. So if you have some sort of, special CSS styling that you want to apply to we're showing disabled field as text, but to required fields, or for fields where there is an error on them. If you have validation rules that you want to apply for all forms, you can include them as part of your template and you never have to configure them again because they'll just exist whenever you create your template. And that is the template The template folder, that's the templating system, and the template app stub that you're going to want to create as part of your template library. Thanks for joining me today and for all of the other days that we've had over the past year. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. I'll look forward to seeing you all again on the 8th of January, 1 week into the new year. See you next year. So long.